one of the goals for everybody in the writers' room and the crew was just to make a show that the whole family can enjoy together. It's for fans of the original series and for new fans. And we really hope that this is the start of more Gremlins in our lives.
I've been watching the series. I love it. It's great. So congrats on it.
Thank you. We're so glad.
I guess we're so glad somebody's seeing it finally.
Well, luckily, so many more people will see it soon. But I guess the first thing I wanted to ask was for Lindsay. I've seen your very excited tweets about how your name is next to Steven Spielberg's as exec producer. It's been really fun to watch you be excited about that. Did you get to have any kind of conversations with him as this was coming together?
Actually, very early on, we pitched him the entire show. And we had some artwork. It was me and Brendan. And I was trying to play it cool, but I also ate 7 pieces of fried chicken in the parking lot in my car from Popeyes in Burbank. And I find it really calmed the nerves. But one of the things that I found so wonderful about after pitching to Spielberg was the first thing he said was he asked if Joe was happy with it. And I thought that was just such a cool thing after, their collaboration over the years, that was the very first thing that he wanted to know. And we were so glad to have Joe come on as a consulting producer for the show.
Joe, it's amazing that the films that you made were part of hold up so well that almost 40 years later, people are so excited to watch this series and revisit this world. Is there something that you would say made those so special that was really important to carry over into the series?
Well, I think the combination of light and dark that the series manages to maintain was pretty important to the success of the first movies. But also, I think the character of Gizmo is really the key to why those movies have been so successful over the years. Since they're in the original version of the script, which he almost shot, Gizmo turned into the bad gremlin after about a half an hour, and Steven Spielberg, in his wisdom, fell in love with Gizmo and gave us the impossible task of making sure that he was the hero of the movie with only 4 weeks before we were supposed to shoot, and we had this little bucket of bolts that we were trying to make into something believable, and we managed to pull it off. But I think that's been the key to the continuing popularity of the movie after all but none of us who worked on this movie had any idea that it would be remembered, all these years later. I mean, you just don't think that way when you're making a movie. You think it's kind of finite. You're making it come out and someday it'll be on TV, and that's about it. But this is it's become a phenomenon. Now it's got a whole animated series.
Brendan, in kind of looking up, I realized you worked on Star Wars Detours, which has such an unfortunate, sad story. Did that experience give you any hesitation coming into another beloved franchise with this?
No, if anything, it fueled me more to get a crack, because it's so much fun to make detours. So the chance to kind of play with somebody else's toys like that, and it's the two franchises that kind of shaped me growing up were Star Wars and Gremlins. So had a blast. Unfortunately, nobody got to see the blast we had in that particular case. But no, I mean, Gremlins even more so, going back to what Joe was saying of how part of, I think, why it's had this life that is that it really stays with people, especially I think a lot of us saw Gremlins as a kid. So as somebody who saw it in the theater probably a little earlier than I should have based on my age, it absolutely gave me nightmares. Yet I also absolutely went out and was reading the storybooks and had the cassette read along type of thing, because I just wanted to keep experiencing it, even though I was still having the nightmares. So, it just shows that Gremlins is going to hang around. And so, yeah, the chance to play with something like that is beloved from childhood, be it Star Wars or Gremlins, I always want to take that chance.
See, I really love the way that you expand the magic of the series, even beyond the Mogwai and Gizmo and everything. How did you all go about figuring out, in what ways you wanted to expand this world and what you wanted to kind of bring in?
And one of the things that we were really thankful for when we were working with Warner's and Amblin was they were always encouraging us to deepen the Mogwai mythology. And so there's not just a fourth rule that we introduce in the series, but there's also a deep dive into why the Mogwai exist in the first place, why they were created, And beyond that, 1920s China and Chinese mythology, spirits and creatures and monsters that are the things that made me scared when I was a little kid. Stories that my parents told me, to me was just such a great backdrop and something to weave through the series, because Chinese spirits and monsters are also kind of like the Mogwai in that they have rules, they're scary, they're really funny, and they all have their unique big personalities. And we're really excited for the guest cast that populate the series and play all the kind of recurring characters and guest roles in the show.
Joe, I'm going to keep just bouncing around. When you were first making the first film and the sequel, were you thinking about ways to expand the story that made it into the series at all, or you suggested, or that might make it into future projects?
In a word, no. First of all, for the first movie, it was just getting it finished. It was an impossible task, and we were all exhausted, and we didn't even know what we had. Then it became this big phenomenon, and then they came to me and said, "Well, we want another one, but we don't understand what you did the first time, so we'll let you do whatever you want, but make sure you do it." And that's how I got to make a movie as weird as Gremlins 2. Much to their chagrin when they came out to trying to make another Gremlins movie, because they didn't understand either one of them. And so now they were trying to figure out, well, no, what are we going to do? But over the years, these things, they grow. And as has been said, I think when you show things to kids when they're young, it stays with them. And the majority of people who fell in love with these movies fell in love with them, but when they were, as Brendan said, maybe a little bit too young to see them.
And Brendan, is there a particular character that you had kind of the most fun either expanding, like Sam Wing, or creating for this series?
Yeah, one of each, actually. On the expanding front, just the pure joy I found in trying to brainstorm evil Mogwai gags. I honestly could fill 5 seasons or more of just the jokes. Because that was, the most fun by far, and kind of was as far as like, this is your chance to do Looney Tunes. This is your chance to, Joe early on gave the great hint of you can never go wrong by having a gremlin try to do human things. That was just a great source for comedy, and he's right. And it was just so much fun to play with that. On the creating side, Matthew Reese's character on our series, our villain, Riley Green, it was just so much fun to write his dialogue. One was just like that Matthew has he was having so much fun with his performance. And once we heard his voice, he was just kind of getting to use his natural Welsh accent for once. It's just such a commanding, unique delivery he had to everything. So writing kind of this, I don't know, a villain who he kind of even owns his villainy in a weird way, but he just wants things that he should not have. He is a co-opting villain for our times, and cultural co-opting villain for our times. And he was just so much fun to write.
I love that you landed on this time period, this part of the world, this story. Were there other things maybe from the films that you, when coming up with this idea, wanted to pull from, or other ideas, other places that you saw this kind of going before you landed on this?
This was kind of the very first thought that came up. This was like the very first take. Of course, when talking to Joe and when we brought Brendan on and the writer's room, and all of our cast and crew, it all developed and snowballed from this initial idea. And at every stage, it kind of, as we brought in more people, it just ended up getting plussed just because all, our cast and crew were really incredible. But, in terms of other ideas, we have a lot of concepts for seasons going forward, if we should be so lucky. And, I think one of the goals for everybody in the writer's room and the crew was just to make a show that the whole family can enjoy together. It's for fans of the original series and for new fans. And we really hope that this is the start of more Gremlins in our lives.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Congrats on the series. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. We're so glad you like it.
Owen. Yeah.
And I want to say really, really, really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
I love Gremlins. I got to say, Joe, my formative movie of my childhood was Small Soldiers. And I just saw that's so,
yes, you're the right age for that.
I know, exactly. So really quick, thank you, and have a great day, guys.